Hey folks, how's it going? The summer is finally here and it's bringing a few more Eternal caps with it. After the Dread Barrage and with an upcoming Guild War, I think I've got some more inventory management to do and to see what I'll be working on over the summer. I know I haven't been posting a lot lately, but I've been mostly working on getting back on track with the ULBs for the Astrals and the Opuses. Opus. Opai? The only ones left behind now are the Faithless and the Dark ones. I will likely skip on the Primal Opus for Water, but I do want both the Dark ones. So let's begin with the progression and planning proper, starting with collection and sparking. I don't really want to go back on how bad my last spark was, but that did kind of lock me into an end of August spark. I'm mainly in it for summer units, but both Flash and Grand Gala lists are getting quite a few characters I would want. For Flash it would be Golden Knight and a chance at more Shalem X's. For the Grand Gala, both Narmea and Leona would be really nice picks, and I honestly wouldn't complain about a Grand Cagliostro either. Still, I will stay true to my word and the spark will go to Summer Kumbira. If I can get her early, it will likely turn into a Narmea spark. If Lamretta works well enough as my lucky charm, the next priority will go to the new summer characters, with Cagliostro and Leona closing the list. From the general list, it's mostly a subfixed thing, and the next one has got to go to Tanya at this point. Xion is plenty cute, but only really works on a primal grid. Unless we can do something really dumb with the Xenocatenas once Ifrit gets its rerun and we can abuse some AX mods. But that's likely going to be a Devil Shiva thing, and I've seen Eldritch Abominations that gave me less nightmares. If I can get her during the next free draws and spark, I will still want to try it though. For science. As far as the included characters go, I'm not too sure if Albert will make it in, but we should at least reach Xion and Neza, meaning Beatrix and Isaac will be in as well. Next up, the Eternals and their 6-star caps. Song and Six are slowly getting to 110, so it's time to prepare the 120 for both. Enemies are fine, I just have to farm a few more Magna 2 raids. Urns are really easy to come by as well. Primal Horns are more than enough for both, so we come to the Guild War weapons. Song is at 36 out of 40 and Dread Barrage reset the shop, so that's an easy 4 weapons there. All the other mats are more than fine, even elementalizing the weapons is not going to be an issue, since you're not locked onto a specific element. I could craft upwards to 30 elementalized Revenant weapons for each of the main wheel elements, so there's nothing to worry about there. Rusted weapons are again a problem. They were legit the hardest thing to get for the 110, and getting 40 more is going to be a huge pain in the ass. So Songs 120 and 130 can happen relatively soon, while 6 is going to have to wait a little bit longer still. The addition of the boxes to Dread Barrage actually let me reach 40 fists for him too, so I'm only really held back by the rusted weapons. Next in the list are Siete and Quatre. I've been wanting Siete 5-star as a general attacker for a while now, and Quatre might have some good use as well. For Siete 5-star I've already completed the 40 boxing, but I'm going to need more if I want to bring him up to 6-star as well. 28 out of 40 silver relic shards just means that I'll be farming the dimensional halo with wind. Dama crystals might be a problem, but I think I should still be fine. I'm going to need 10 for my 2 remaining astrals, 20 more for both Quatre and Siete 5-stars, and I will still have 20 left for a third Eternal 6-star. The only reason why I would want to wait before spending them is to check the 140 and 150 uncapped materials, but I guess we'll talk about that in September. As always, the flop prisms keep being the big bottleneck. I'll be able to get Song and Six to 130 without issues, but I'll be left with only 10k prisms afterwards, meaning I can get Siete up to 110 or both him and Quatre to 100. Looking at Siete's ULB kit though, it looks like 110 is going to be more than enough. For some reason, they've decided to give him Combat System V2 stuff that right now is really only relevant in Beelzebub. And while I'm sure there'll be more raids in the future where the 30% Fate Chain meter or the 3 turns chain debuff will be useful, Siete's 120 and 130 uncaps can wait for said future to become the present. Still, the 15% damage cap up on Chegetek looks pretty sweet, and I think I might forgo Quatres FLB for it. My 4th ULB Eternal is likely going to be Tien, so I'll be saving some mats until her release. 5th looks interesting as well with her delay on Chegetek, but I don't want to jump into a 10k low light orb grind this soon after Song. Now let's move on to the Evokers. Alanan is nice and fresh, and the only ones left are Lobelia and Estarriola. With the Guild War coming later this month, my hands are pretty tied. Still, being barely above halfway there on the Sephira Stone side and only 44% there for the Astras means I've got to spend most of my Arca points on them while spamming the Celsus route as much as possible. A Magnafest with a double Arca Rune Dash would be really nice to see right now. As for Estarriola, I have no Windborn Astras, so I'm afraid he'll get recruited when he'll get recruited. And since I'm almost done with them, maybe it's also a good time to start looking into their domains and the new World Foundation weapons. They are both pretty heavy investments, eating up almost 300 Astras, 210 Ideans and 50 Sephira Stones for each combination of weapon and character. So for them too, I will want some sort of ranking to decide which ones to start with. Things may change drastically once the 5-star caps for the Evokers will come out, but I'm not expecting that to happen this year. The last batch of the Eternal ULBs is coming out at the end of August, and I doubt they'll follow them up immediately with the 5-star Evokers. I think the earliest we'll hear words about them will be on the 8th anniversary livestream, and they might see a summer or autumn release. Still, they are very likely going to be linked to their weapons, so we might have around a year worth of time to prepare for them. Let's begin with the domains. Pro ends the cooldown on Indomitus upon Chegetek, bringing a bit more healing and a faster clear. With decent DATA, it should become available once every 3 turns, and it's got good synergy with Wanlong, Typhon and other ignition sources. It looks okay if you're in a pinch and you need to make a comeback. The skill cap up is pretty neat too. Alanan gets a random skill cooldown cut when MC uses the Heat of the Sun's Chegetek, up to a maximum of 5 turns, but while nice for upkeeping the field, Alanan is mostly a burst oriented character, so I'm not sure how often he'll run with a katana wielding MC, especially when the weapons are still locked at 3-star max. Maria Theresa gets an extra guts buff to grant to all allies when she gets swapped in, which may come in clutch against content with hard-hitting single hits and can also help with her skill too. It looks okay. Hacelia gets a team-wide heal upon using Lean skills, but not even the wiki has a value on how big it is. Even if it was a 2k heal though, it would only be 4k HP healed every 5 turns, so it's likely going to go on the lowest priority slot. Hacelia herself looks like she could be a really good buffer and debuffer, but she needs to be able to manage better her moon phases and possibly extend the duration of the full moon. Kaim gets a random increase to 2 of his stacks upon using a Chegetek, but outside of some meme setups, if Kaim gets to the front line, he's in the wrong spot. He also gets a skill cap and a CA damage cap domain nodes, which might become really good in case his 5-star doesn't lock him into the backline, but right now he's kind of a sleeper. Speaking of backlines, Lobelia's domain adds a 3% stackable boost to attack and defense, capping at 15% in addition to his stackable skill cap up buff. Simple and efficient, even if these stats aren't that high. I like this. Estarriola brings yet another buff from the backline, this time a team-wide Dispel cancel on a 4-man chain burst, as well as more skill cap nodes for frontline use. That's pretty good. Some of the better buffs are undispellable already, but the only other sources of Dispel cancel in Wind are normal Grimnir and FLB Freyr, and it can help save the extra attack ups and echoes. Catzelia gets a heal plus clear added to his Chegetek, bringing even more sustain, which is going to make him even better for endgame content solo runs. That's pretty much all he does though, and it feels like a lot of mats to have a slightly easier time in fast solos. Now Borger. 2.5 turns, 70% echo sounds pretty insane, but it does lock you into using the Shooting of the Star as a main hand. The 6% damage amplification from his other domain EMPs looks great too, and it should also be another form of cap break to add to his 10% pre-existing damage amp and Iron Fist buff. This would be really nice to get, hopefully once the weapon gets their FLPs. Lastly, Nir's domain increases the Love's Redemption stack by 6 when MC performs a charge attack with the Pain of Death as a main hand. But this feels like it's a bit counterproductive since the weapon grants an auto-revive to the character in the 4th slot and gives you a pretty big stackable attack and defense up when said character dies, with Nir being the easiest fodder to use for the job. Alternatively, a Death Call or characters who consume their own HP or have a substitute can also fill that role, while Nir becomes a standard damage dealing character. The extra 15% CA damage cap up looks pretty neat as well. In terms of priority though, I would say Lobelia has the most obvious buff with the fewest strings attached. Gazenboger's damage looks really good on paper even if you've got to jump through a few hoops for it. And outside of a few specific raids, Maria's Guts could save your life, so I would very much like to get that too. Followed by Froze, Heal and Clear. So let's go take a look at the weapons and see which ones can be decent enough to aim for. Just a little warning beforehand. The weapons are all still locked at 3 stars with their skill level 10 and the EX modifiers being just a massive one like the Xeno weapons. The level 10 skill has the same value as the level 15 event and proving ground weapons, 18% attack, and the lower stats from being capped at level 100 makes them a lot more niche as well. Let's begin with the Rise of Justice. Unworldly damage to a foe, but consuming 60% of MC's HP on charge attack. It sounds pretty good for starters, especially since it's also going to make it easier to enable Maria's skill 2 as well. The 3k shield is okay, and it also comes with a 3k heal on Dispel, bringing even more synergy with its evoker. The Glorybringer Awakening is the same as the 3-star Disperia as well, so it can be used for sliming and it's going to do a better job than the Sapphire weapons. It looks like a decent option for Chrysaor or Relic Buster OTK as well. For the bindings of the Hangman, we're back to a massive CA damage, but a boost to both CA damage and CA damage cap if you've got 12 or more buffs, going up to a 3.7 million charge attack cap. Not bad. The 1.2k heal at the end of the turn can also be quite useful as long as you can maintain your 12 buffs. The main issue with it are going to be which classes you can run it on, because Spartan is only really used in Fa, Apsaras might as well not exist, and the Spear Cavalier is a bit of a meme. It may see some use with the new Belial chain that brings Freyr's buff for OTK setups, but those setups already work with other weapons too. For the Nir Dagger, the Shorted should be clearable and the auto revive is a nice buff to have if you want to have Nir out in the field. Could be an interesting Masquerade main hand if Nir can survive long enough. The Theater of Temperance comes with an unworldly CA damage but locks MC for a turn afterwards. To make up for it, it grants a free assassin as well as a one-time 50% echo. It looks like a pretty neat weapon for monks since they also get a damage cap boost as the fight goes on. I wonder how this stacks against the class champion weapon, but with AWR Bigs existing, I'm not sure how good it'll be. Now Devil, 200% skill damage up and 50% skill damage cap up on charge attack could be really nice for a monk MC. Even if it only lasts one turn, it's still going to affect the mantra proc. Not only that, it also comes with a 50k supplemental damage for all allies against enemies with red heat, which you can apply easily with a Devil Call without even running Froze up front. I think this might be one of the most interesting ones so far, and I think I might want to try it. Staying on the skill nukes topic, the Tao's Hammer brings an extra 400k base cap nuke on charge attack, accompanied by 50% damage cut. The skill nuke will also activate once every 3 turns, making it a pretty good option for a more DPS oriented lumberjack. The Shooting of the Star comes with a 90% dark damage cut for allies under the Divinity buff that only Gazenboger himself can upkeep nicely. For the others, it's a 3 out of 9 turns uptime from the Star's Call. Still, for the duration of said call, all allies also get a 20% echo, which might be interesting to try with the Relic Buster, Fairy and Grand Jan for short burst content. Next is the Reflection of the Moon, somehow a bow, which grants the Tear Lunacy buff to all allies, same as Aselia's third skill. Maybe it can help with her horrible 2 out of 5 turns uptime. When used as a main weapon, it also boosts the attack spec of all allies when there's a full moon up. The buff itself is a really nice 50% unique attack up and a 30% damage cap up, which gets added to the Tears of Lunacy 20% echo and 10% damage cap up. Too bad it only lasts for one turn, and then you need to either rely on the Moon's Call, in which case you can make use of it on turn 5 and then on turn 14, or you're going to have to manage the moon phases with Hacelia and try not to let her constantly reset them with her charge attack. It might be too much of a hassle to play around with. The Heat of the Sun comes with a free clear on charge attack and a 50% chance to grant MC a double strike, much like the Kame Katana. The drain effect on double strike isn't a bad buff either. Outside of the Sun's Call, quite a few fire characters are getting it in their kits, so it might turn out to be quite the fun weapon to play with. Lastly, we've got the Melody of Judgment, converting the boost to defense into a boost to attack for 2.5 turns on charge attack. It also brings a small team-wide damage over time for 3% HP per turn, as well as a 30% earth damage reduction. It actually looks like a really nice defensive option for Lumberjack, and of course it works best with Katselia's own Earth switch. So here's my list so far. The first purchase is going to be pretty cheap, so I think I might just... There. Let's begin with the Kiss of the Devil. The second one is likely going to be the Justice Sword, but I want to ULB my Fatalist first, and then move on to the Star and the Tower weapons. I like how the list ended up with the same top 4 spots for both weapons and the mains. It's going to make the farm a little bit easier. Again, the material investment for this stuff is quite insane, so I'll be taking my time with them and pretty much wait for the new weapon and cap announcement before going a bit harder on this farm. For now, just getting the 0-star weapon and maybe unlocking 1 or 2 domain nodes is going to be more than enough for most. Alright then, that's going to be it for me for the moment. It looks like the most send I'll see this summer will be from Arcarum with a side of Angel Halo. Let me know if you've got your plans for this summer and if there's some Eternals that you're planning to uncap. As always, thanks a lot for watching and see you soon. Ciao!